It's a profound privilege to stand before you today on a subject that touches the very core of our human experience. Feeling lost? Have you ever been there? That quiet ache in the soul where the path ahead seems shrouded in fog, where questions outnumber answers and the weight of uncertainty presses down like an unseen hand. I've been there myself, in those seasons when life appeared to have turned its back, when dreams felt distant and hope seemed fragile. But here's what I've learned through the years, through the ups and the downs, through the triumphs and the trials. When you feel most lost, that's often the exact moment when the divine begins to speak loudest. The topic we're exploring today is simple yet transformative. Feeling lost? God cares about you. You see, life has its seasons, just as nature does. There are times of planting and times of harvest, times of clarity and times of confusion. And in those confusing times, it's easy to wonder if anyone is paying attention, if the struggles matter, if there's a greater purpose unfolding. But let me assure you, from the depths of my own journey and from the timeless truths I've studied, God cares deeply about you, not in some distant, abstract way, but personally, intimately, as a father cares for his child. When you're wandering, feeling adrift in a sea of doubt or disappointment, that's when his care becomes most evident, if we're willing to look for it. Think about it. The greatest growth often comes not in the sunshine of success, but in the storms of uncertainty. Feeling lost isn't a sign of abandonment, it's an invitation to seek, to grow, to develop a faith that can move mountains. And today, we're going to unpack this truth together, step by step, so you can walk out of here knowing without a shadow of a doubt that you are seen, you are valued, and you are guided. Here are the 4 keynotes we'll cover. Keynote number 1, understanding why we feel lost in the first place. Keynote number 2, the power of faith when direction seems gone. Keynote number 3, recognizing God's care in everyday signs. Keynote number 4, steps to find your way back to purpose. Keynote number 1. Let me take you back to the beginning of this journey we're all on. The moments when feeling lost creeps in like a shadow at dusk. It's something every one of us has faced at one time or another, whether we're ready to admit it or not. You wake up one day, look around, and wonder how you got here. The job that once excited you now feels like a grind. The relationships that were supposed to fulfill now leave a hollow space. The dreams you chased seem to have slipped through your fingers like sand. And in that quiet desperation, the question arises, why do I feel so lost? Why does life sometimes feel like a maze with no exit? To truly grasp this, we have to start with the fundamentals of human nature. We're designed for purpose, for meaning, for progression. From the earliest days, we've been wired to seek, to explore, to grow. But here's the key insight I've come to over decades of studying life and people. Feeling lost isn't a flaw in the design. It's often a signal that we're out of alignment with that design. It's the soul's way of saying something needs attention, something needs change. Consider your own life for a moment. Think about those periods when everything seemed to flow, when decisions came easily, when opportunities appeared at just the right time, when you felt a sense of direction pulling you forward. What was different then? Often it was a closer connection to your values, to your inner compass, to that quiet voice of wisdom we sometimes call intuition, or for those of us who believe, the gentle guidance of God. When we drift from that, when we chase the wrong things, surround ourselves with the wrong influences, neglect our personal growth, we begin to feel that disorientation. But why does this happen? Let's dig deeper. One major reason is the accumulation of small neglects. You see, life is like a garden. If you plant good seeds, discipline, learning, kindness, faith, and tend to them daily, you reap a bountiful harvest. But if you neglect the weeds of doubt, the pests of bad habits, the drought of inaction, things start to wither. Feeling lost often stems from years of small compromises, saying yes when we should say no, pursuing approval over authenticity, measuring success by external markers rather than internal fulfillment. I remember early in my own career when I was scraping by, barely making ends meet. I felt profoundly lost, not just financially, but existentially. Who was I? Where was I going? What was the point of all the effort if it led nowhere? That sense of being adrift pushed me to question everything. And in that questioning, I began to uncover the root causes. Much of it traced back to my philosophy, the set of beliefs and attitudes I'd adopted without much thought. I believed hard work alone was enough, but I hadn't worked on myself. I believed circumstances dictated outcomes, but I hadn't taken full responsibility for changing them. Another profound cause of feeling lost is the illusion of control. We live in a world that bombards us with messages of self-sufficiency. You can have it all, build your empire, manifest your destiny. And while personal responsibility is crucial, it's the foundation of all progress, there's a danger in forgetting that we're not the ultimate architects of life. Storms come that we didn't invite. Losses arrive unannounced. Plans unravel despite our best efforts. In those moments, if our foundation is built solely on our own strength, it crumbles, leaving us disoriented and alone. This is where many people stay stuck, blaming the world, blaming others, blaming fate. But understanding why we feel lost requires honesty. It requires looking in the mirror and asking, have I been relying too much on my limited vision? Have I ignored the bigger picture, the eternal perspective? For those who acknowledge a higher power, feeling lost often arises when we've wandered from that relationship, when prayer becomes sporadic, when scripture gathers dust, when we prioritize the urgent over the important. Let's explore this further through the lens of seasons. Life isn't a straight line, it's cyclical. There are winters of the soul where everything seems barren and cold. In nature, winter isn't destruction, it's preparation. The trees aren't dead, they're conserving energy, strengthening roots deep underground where we can't see. Similarly, when we feel lost, it's often a winter season for our spirit. God, in His infinite wisdom, allows these periods not to punish, but to prepare us for greater fruitfulness. Think of the biblical stories that illustrate this so powerfully. Joseph, sold into slavery, imprisoned unjustly, years of feeling utterly lost, forgotten in a foreign land. Yet those years weren't wasted. They were forging in him the character, wisdom, and resilience needed to save nations. David, anointed king as a boy, then spending years fleeing for his life in caves and wilderness, lost in the literal sense, pursued and alone. But in that wilderness, he learned to depend not on position or power, but on divine protection and provision. Moses, tending sheep in the desert for 40 years after a life of privilege and then failure, profoundly lost, his dreams of leading his people buried in the sand. Yet it was in that obscurity that God shaped him into the greatest leader of his time. These aren't anomalies, they're patterns. Feeling lost precedes finding deeper purpose when we respond rightly. Now, consider the modern parallels. How many successful people trace their breakthroughs to rock-bottom moments? the entrepreneur who loses everything only to rebuild wiser, the artist who faces rejection after rejection, honing their craft in obscurity, the individual battling addiction or depression, emerging with empathy and strength to help others. Feeling lost isn't the end. It's often the catalyst. But to move beyond mere understanding, we must address the distractions that amplify this feeling. In our age, we're drowning in noise, constant notifications, endless opinions, superficial connections. We scroll through highlight reels of others' lives, comparing our behind-the-scenes struggles, and wonder why we feel so directionless. This external focus pulls us away from internal clarity. When we don't take time for reflection, for solitude, for listening to that still small voice, lostness intensifies. Moreover, unresolved pain plays a role. Unhealed wounds from the past, betrayals, failures, losses, create internal maps that lead us astray. We avoid certain paths out of fear, sabotage opportunities unconsciously, or cling to familiar dysfunction because the unknown feels scarier. Feeling lost can be the soul's cry for healing, for forgiveness, for release. Let's not overlook the role of unmet expectations. We craft visions of how life should unfold, marriage by this age, success by that milestone, happiness is a constant state. When reality diverges, disorientation sets in. But true wisdom recognizes that our limited perspective can't encompass the full tapestry. What seems like a detour may be the direct route in God's greater plan. I could go on sharing stories from my own life and from countless others I've mentored. There was a time when, after achieving some success, I still felt an emptiness, a sense of being lost amid plenty. It drove me to deeper study, to philosophy, to faith. And what I discovered is that feeling lost often stems from pursuing the wrong treasures: wealth without wisdom, achievement without significance, pleasure without purpose. In essence, we feel lost when we've disconnected from our source. For the believer, that source is God, the Creator who knit us together, who knows the number of hairs on our head, who has plans not to harm but to prosper. When we stray from that relationship, from living in alignment with eternal truths, the compass spins wildly. Yet here's the beautiful paradox. The very act of acknowledging we're lost is the first step toward being found. It humbles us, opens us, makes us teachable. Pride keeps us wandering in circles. Humility invites guidance. As we delve into this keynote, remember that understanding the why empowers us to address the how. Feeling lost isn't permanent unless we choose to stay there. It's a season, a signal, a sacred invitation to return, to realign, to rediscover the care that's been there all along. And that's just the foundation. Once we grasp why we feel this way, we can begin to see how faith bridges the gap, how signs of divine care appear even in the darkness, and how practical steps lead us back to purpose. But for now, let's sit with this truth. Your lostness has meaning. It's not random. It's part of a larger story where God is actively working, caring, drawing you closer.